thank you so much for joining us today. We will begin the webinar in just a minute, but I wanted to take a moment to let you know a little bit more about the Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance and how we are growing stronger in 2021. The Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance is evolving into a better, more efficient approach to support state industry and individual manufacturers. One of the ways we want to share that detailed expertise is through these webinars. This is just a brief overview of one of the many programs that we will be offering. Of course, we still rely heavily on our network of sponsors and partners. Many of those partners have capability and services that complement our goal of making your business more successful. We certainly cannot do it alone. And we want to say thank you to our sponsors and educational partners who are on this call today. Thank you for those who are joining us. And as a reminder, MEAs are still accessible, and traditional services like problem solving, business connections, and engineering work remain available for manufacturers in all 77 counties. We are still there when you need us. And now on to our webinar, which will be presented today by its developer, Mr. Shane Barber. Throughout the event, Ben Alexander, Donovan Hensley, and myself, Jessica Mugg of the Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance will be live and answering your questions as they arrive. So please feel free to use the chat function throughout the presentation to ask any questions that you may have. And now I want to go ahead and turn it over to Shane and let you take control.
All right, thank you so much. So appreciate everybody's time this morning. I know it's valuable to you. Manufacturers, don't have a lot of time, spare time on their hands. So thanks for doing that. Hopefully today you will get some benefit out of this. Today's topic is optimizing tactical performance. It's a lot of words for how do we ensure that we are collaborating, coordinating, and communicating to get your products to your end customer in the most efficient manner and drive productivity along with it. So that's what we'll be talking about as a topic. As Jessica has mentioned, please write your questions down, fill it in the chat box. We'll go through the materials first, and then we will make sure we have enough time to answer any questions and open that up for any one of you. So like all of our webinars, what is new, has been new, and what's making OMA stronger, like Jessica has put it, is we have a very distinctive model to really help you understand and partner with you on how to optimize your organization. This model is what we call the Straight Six model. It's an holistic approach to understanding your organization's performance. And it is a process in how we diagnose where the pain or the issues are in your organization. And so it leads to the lead cylinder. It's a car analogy. So if you take a car, all cylinders got to be perfectly timed based off of the lead cylinder. The lead cylinder is strategy. And often at times, organizations will say they have a strategy, but realistically what they have is a goal. An example with the manufacturer a couple months ago when they said, yes, we have a strategy, it's robust, and our leadership team's aligned to it. We said, well, tell us more about what your strategy is on how you grow your company and scale it. And they said, it is meet all of the demand we have. That's an example of a goal, not a strategy. A strategy is strategic objectives with metrics aligned, ownership by the leadership team, and it is a roadmap or at the end destination in a point in time where the whole organization is shifting to. Often, one of the check engine lights on this cylinder is alignment. If your leadership team is not aligned to the strategy, it is not clear and agreed upon, it will cause issues in the organization. Structure is that next cylinder. You got to perfectly align your structure to your strategy. And if it isn't aligned, you'll have siloization. The symptoms of siloization is each leader in your organization, the leader of operations, sales, production, materials, procurement, engineering or design, if they're all marching to a different direction, they are siloed and working on their own goals. And so that is a symptom that you got to get that leadership alignment and tuned to that cylinder. People practices, people live in the structure. Structure defines the hierarchy and decision making, and those goals. And so it's really, people aren't enabled or empowered or aligned to the structure that is, going to meet its strategy. Then it's the role clarity is the number one here. It's role clarity. It's having standard work from leader all the way to lead, and routines on how they will achieve the strategic objectives. Methods and tools. That cylinder is about standards. It's about reducing variance. That is the number one goal out on, in organizations and on production floors. And if you don't have standards set, this is where continuous improvement, lean tools and methods live. And this is an area that really controls that variance of your product, its quality, and its performance to your customer. Lateral processes. This is the topic of today. It's how do you coordinate the work from your production schedule when you get the call from a customer, they order your product, you put it on the schedule. How do you coordinate that? And and if it's left to chance, then you'll get gridlock. And so this is really about communication and collaboration, but it is definitely not the soft skills. This is how do you make sure that you deliver upon your promises that you're making? And then the last cylinder, which it really is tied to the output shaft, is rewards and metrics. If they're not clear, they're not aligned to strategy, you don't have common goals amongst your departments, amongst your leaders, then you're going to have issues in achieving those. So common goals. And like I mentioned today, we're talking all about lateral processes. And the one today, at minimum, if this is done correctly, done by the process we'll share with you today, we're seeing a 20% improvement in productivity, but that is a byproduct. And I'll mention why that's a byproduct in today's session. And so again, this is about looking for these signs. It's a diagnostic against this model. And what OMA has is we have the code reader. And so today we'll talk about some of the symptoms and lateral processes, what it causes in companies, and more importantly, the fixes from that perspective. So today's topic, we're going to talk about visual performance breakthrough systems. We'll define what that is. We'll drill down on a VMS system, a visual management system, which includes how do you huddle your team up on the beginning and at the end of shift to set the goals for the day. And then at the end of that shift, how you hold them accountable to achieving those goals. We'll talk about a constraint operations management process. And then we'll talk about this tactical management cycle. And lastly, how leader standard work aligns to it. Leader standard work was a previous webinar. This will connect that leader standard work to executing your strategy and the tactics it takes to get products out the door. And then we'll share some of the results. So typical production model, I've been doing this for quite some time, been a consultant for 10 years, been utilizing this model for 20, and I've been a supervisor, a manager, a leader of production facilities. But what's typical is leadership sets a production schedule and expects their people to deliver. And that's not a bad thing. They say, okay, here's our orders, here's our demand, and let's get that down into a schedule that should be executed to, let's put the time frame for this week. Supervisors and managers get that schedule. They walk in the morning, they communicate that. And most of the time, this is a verbal communication of that schedule to meet and how they're going to coordinate those results. And they'll do that in like a weekly stand-up. Very infrequently do people meet more talking about the schedule than once a week. People will say they do, but if they do, it's verbally. The schedule changes because your work environment is dynamic. Customers call, they want to escalate, they want to pull in their schedule. So the supervisors get those changes. They become firefighting because what was the plan yesterday is no longer the plan. And to get the results, the company struggles to meet the schedule and the goals. More importantly, the individuals on the floor, your technicians, your assemblers, your packers, whatever the nature of your production floor is, they get a goal one day and the next day it changes. And so then quality issues, delivery time issues, stock out issues all start to fall down here and be a problem. Company invest And so the company gets fed up, and everybody today is looking for a software and a system to minimize the need for this face-to-face communication and collaboration. And it is a hefty price tag. And at the end of the day, leaders get upset. They blame the confusion and lack of execution on the people doing the work. People just don't get it. They don't meet our delivery times. My customers are unhappy. And this is a cycle that a lot of us are in. If it sounds familiar to you, then it's because your communication and your collaboration process is probably verbal, it's probably informal. And if I asked you to say, well, we talk to our people all the time, but do you do it with the visual management system, and do you do it with the rigor that it takes to make sure that you can execute your plan? And so the facts about communication, our society today, if you have children, you'll probably, smile at this one, but everybody is trying to invest more dollars in systems and processes to replace this face-to-face communication. Look at the very call we're on today, with this platform. We're not face-to-face, we're not in a room. Yes, there's benefits, but at the end of the day, we're looking for an MRP system that can do that. And I'm not saying it's bad, but nothing replaces the face-to-face interaction and allows people to ask questions versus an electronic device that says, here's the schedule, number one priority, due date is X. We spend more time on Facebook and other social media sites than we do talking about our daily priorities and goals in our companies today. Today, somebody in your company is on a social media website, probably tagging somebody, probably responding to something, when we probably should be coordinating the work. Leaders often admit that the information in their company changes minute by minute, but in that same conversation, they'll say, no, we meet, we communicate, we have a weekly meeting where we stand up with everybody, that is involved in the scheduling activities. And then I'll ask, well, how often does your communication change or information change? Oh, it's minute by minute. So if yours is minute by minute and you're only meeting weekly, don't you think you should align your communication systems and how you collaborate against a common goal more timely to how often it changes? So this would say daily, this might be a couple times daily to do that. When plans don't happen, we blame the same employees and teams that didn't execute it and meet the goal, that need the information and aren't getting it. And lastly, nothing can replace good old face-to-face, in-person communication, two-way communication on, if this is the goal, then this is what I need to achieve it. I need parts, I need tools, I need better drawings, plans. And if you have those kind of frustrations in your company, then this is probably the session for you and how to do that. Sports teams huddle while the game is being played. Why doesn't organizations? Sports teams change their plan immediately. Pick your favorite kind of sport, and that's why everybody takes a knee. Pull in, take a knee. I'm watching the game from the side of the court, and we probably need to change it. So why don't organizations? Common issues, problems, symptoms, are when departments aren't working together. When we say, hey, what are we running today? I don't know. Yesterday we were supposed to be getting out, these conveyor tracks, and today we're focusing on the, canning equipment module. Just making things up here to keep it lively. There's little to no communication when people say, when they're asked what's the number one thing that is causing issues on the production floor, they say, oh, number one is communication. People are often left in the dark on decisions being made, schedule changes, and how we need to execute to the work. And coordination is low across the company. If you don't believe this, just go ask your people that are being asked to deliver the products. And I'd be very surprised if in their top three, communication is not the number one. Over 10 years, I've walked, thousands of floors, and that is in the top three. What it causes is meetings aren't run well in our companies. Meetings are expensive. The way to quantify how much a meeting costs you, it's simple. Take the hourly wages or the salary rate of people in that meeting, times it times number of people, and then then you see how much it costs you per hour. So people don't meet to discuss those challenges and issues that they need to. Leadership is unaware of the help they need, and performance is low and unpredictable as a result from that perspective. The fixes, it's easy. Implement daily team huddles. within the departments that you have or your work cells. We'll talk more about that. Utilize a visual management method. We'll show you a visual management method. Adopt servant leadership. The whole, role of leadership is to serve others that are trying to get this work done. And the way you serve them is by removing barriers to collaborate and giving them the resources they need. And then lastly is you have to align your strategy to the tactical goals. If you set a strategy that at some point doesn't become tactical on how people need to change the way they work and the focus on what they're working to engage them, then your strategy is probably more visionary, less practical. So common problems, what they cause, and the fixes. We'll go deeper in the fixes in this session. So if you're seeing any of these issues, on what we've shared already, then there's probably a need to drive a systematic way to communicate and get people to collaborate against a common goal from that perspective. If you think about how communication happens in organizations, it should be like a waterfall. Top management should be setting the strategy, setting the tactics, therefore setting the schedule. And as that water falls down, it gets more tactical, more tangible versus, a 3-year strategy. It should be broken down into quarters of each year, broken down into months, into weeks, into days on your production schedule. So the value stream managers own breaking that down. Supervisors need to know what is tactical, what needs executed today, and what resources and barriers need removed. They need to be pushing that back uphill so people are informed. Team leads need to be setting those work activities and assignments, and the team members need to be understanding what needs to be happening hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly. And if the information is inaccurate, then it causes issues. Also, we know in this waterfall communication, the details of the communication, if it's verbal, those drop off. They get less effective from that perspective, and it breaks down. So, and that breakdown, I don't know if you've ever played the telephone game, but organizations are playing it live as we speak. Here's an example when we put a visual management system in place. We line up everybody in the room. We pull somebody outside and we say, hey, I'm the leader of the organization, the production manager. And, I've just heard from my maintenance techs that we need a bearing extractor to remove this bearing from the drive shaft housing on X piece of equipment, to get this vehicle back on the road with this car analogy. Then we whisper that in their ear. If you've ever done this activity, it becomes very colorful. We let them to go back in and we have them run it through 25 people, if that's how many people are in the room. And this always comes back so different. I need a new vehicle. I need a new tool. I need a crankshaft puller. And so, you got to be clear on what, why, and when you need it. And if it's verbal, the telephone game breaks down. And so if you don't believe me, just practice it today, and your company's probably doing that. So how do you fix it? Today, we're going to share with you a breakthrough performance system, how to tactically optimize your company's results. And this here has minimum of 20% productivity attached to it. And I can say that because studies and research has proven it. But here's our typical approach. If you want to speed up the belt of your organization, you want to get on-time delivery with safety, with quality, with your people engaged, then it's probably not the approach. The typical one you're using today is probably not the right one. What is that typical approach? Manager leader dictates that we gotta increase productivity. It has to increase based on our financial performance today. So they grab the supervisors, pull them all together, and say we got to work faster and harder to get this done. Supervisors are instructed to tell their teams they got to produce more. And when they're asked why, they a lot of times can't explain it. They just said, you don't need to know that. We just need to move faster. Employees fear for their job. That's the output. And they work harder, but it is short term. And it amazes me how many organizations, how many people on production floors are working under fear because they don't know why the organization's making a change. They don't know why that the schedule is shuffling around, and they think the organization is about to go out of business when a lot of times organizations are thriving. They're just not coordinating their efforts. The result is short term. And the cost of the organization is the long-term capability. People don't like to work in fear. They can achieve those results, but when you ask them time and time again, run faster, jump higher, it kind of tails off. The risk to them is just like, yeah, this is normal. This happens all the time. It's going to change. Don't worry. And so the reality is, if you want to increase output, it doesn't equal more productivity. Driving faster, if we use a car analogy, if we use Indy 500 as an example, it doesn't win the race. It has a different effect on the vehicle. The reality is, trying to dictate productivity often causes safety, quality, cost, and morale issues. People will tell you, I can get more out the door, but it's going to have safety is going to go up, quality is going to go down, cost is going to get higher, and the cost on the team, morale is going to be an issue. And often we don't want to hear that. You can't just speed up the belt. If you remember the Lucille Ball candy packing video, I see a smile there. People remember it. They speed up the belt, but they're hiding all the quality issues. And they're gonna drive for a safety issue. And this is happening on production floors today. In the world of Indy, if somebody has ever seen Danica Patrick's, attempt to win it many years ago, she ran out of gas. They sped up the car. They made a decision not to do a pit stop. They didn't do the pit stop. And the remaining 3 to 5 laps, she coasted to a halt. The point is, you got to pull in for a pit stop, recommunicate, refuel, change the tires, make adjustments so people know what, why, and how you're doing it. The complexity to do this, there's 5 variables to drive for this, and it's to increase output. You got to have quality, you got to have safety, you got to have reduced cost, and that will equal morale. I mentioned today, by putting visual management in place, if you do it systematically, you can drive it. We've seen many cases where it's well above 20%, but it's a byproduct. The byproduct really is productivity, but all these other things can come with it, including morale, if it's done well. So what does the research say on this 20% I keep quoting? Back in 1962, Bill Daniels had a theory. He was a consultant working for FedEx, and he had a theory. If people had a chance to set their own goals against the schedule and ask questions and engage in that goal-setting process, that they would be more productive. So FedEx said, sure, at one of their distribution hubs, said, let's go ahead and try it. He had employees set their own goals for the day and how many packages that they could move. And lo and behold, minimum of 20%. It was simple and it was easy. They engaged them in the goal setting process, but they also held them accountable at the end of the day, and they saw a minimum of 20%. Since I've been doing this since 1994, where I put the very first visual management system in a large corporation called Intel Corporation, my teams were 20% more effective than any other teams. And then my factory was 20% more effective. So it works at small level, large level. And this research comes out of visual performance breakthrough systems. So what is a breakthrough system? It's a visual management system where you can have the goals in front of the team in their work cell, so they see what is first, second, third priority on the schedule, and then who is assigned to it and what the goal of the day is. So that's one part. Another component is having these work team huddles to where you meet in the morning, set those goals, ask them what will it take to achieve that, give them a chance to give feedback, take that feedback into a constraint operations meeting where managers live that make decisions on resources and removing those barriers. And then at end of shift, you huddle back up with that team and you review. You said you could get 22 units today. What actually were you able to achieve and why? If they were able to exceed it, you want to know why, because that is probably a best known method. If they weren't able to hit their goal, ask them why and use that as learning. And then make sure you don't have to have that same learning occur day in and day out. Why weren't you able to hit the goal? Let's quantify that and let's remove that barrier. You put in place a constraint ops meeting where managers meet daily to review the 24-hour performance against a metrics dashboard. To do this, you have to have good metrics. They have to align to the visual management system, and you got to be present daily to review that and escalate the actions needed so people can achieve their goal. And lastly, it's accountability. Often I'll ask people to get the products out the door, what is your accountability system you use to do it? And they'll say, well, we have a schedule, we put it on a large TV, and then we know, what's on schedule, on track, what's not on track. You got to follow up at the individual level. You got to assign people to their work activities to achieve that schedule, and you got to hold them accountable. So it all relies on supervisory facilitation and coordination. This is their leader standard work, and they got to be present to win from that. And more importantly, leadership has to be present on production floors. So that constraint ops meeting, measuring 24-hour performance is a place they need to be. When they're not meeting it, they should do a gimbal walk out on the floor, right to the point of activity where the team wasn't able to hit that, and ask them, how can I help you to do that? That's an example of being present on the production floor, whether it's on the carpet or concrete. Leaders should be following up on that. And then when you're not meeting it systematically, put in place problem-solving methodologies and make sure they're being practiced so they can hit it the next day, the following day, and the day after that. So that's how we define a performance breakthrough system. Let's keep drilling down into the components of one. This is a very good visual diagram of how strategy is set by leadership at the top. And then I mentioned, when you set a strategy, you need to be very specific with the strategic objectives, goals, and metrics to achieve that. That builds this visual scorecard on the strategy. Let's say it's 18 to 36 months. Then that team, those owners, those leaders need to break it down into a year, break it down into quarter of the year, break it down into month of the year, and then break it down into week. That is called a strategy project plan. We have a method called strategy to action that does exactly that. To achieve your strategy, you got to break it down all the way to the work week. Then you put in place a daily constraint operations meeting where we put a visual metrics dashboard. That dashboard is measuring your safety, quality, cost, output, and employee morale. So that is where leaders come in every morning. Let's say the shift starts at 7. Your leaders come in at 8 o'clock. The huddles have already happened. They've asked for help. The meeting kicks off with a metrics dashboard review. The last 24 hours, did anybody get hurt? Did we have a near miss? Did we have quality issues? What is our on-time delivery from yesterday? And then what is the schedule for today? And what is the help needed that has come from the huddles down here at the bottom? This sets up the plan, do, check, act. And this, if you want to get more than 20% productivity, putting in visual management boards to where, and I'll show you one today, where the work teams know the schedule, who's assigned, what the goal is, and what time that will be moving through the production floor. That is setting up this visual management system that ties to that constraint ops meeting and ties to the strategy. This is really how you drive communication and prioritization to the next level. The cycle here on your right, beginning of shift huddles, take the schedule, set the goals. Constraint ops meeting is measuring the output from yesterday and then making decisions today on what help is needed from that production floor. The managers leave that meeting, go right back to the production visual management system. Might change the priority, communicate with the floor, then end of shift huddles, quantify how they were able to achieve that or not. Managers follow up on the accountability and then back into the next day. To some, this seems like a lot of work, but to others, huddles are less than 10 to 15 minutes per day. I've been involved in huddles that are 5 minutes to where here's the schedule, here's what you're assigned on, what is your goal, and let's go get to work. And then the end of shift one is just following up on those goals from that standpoint. And this reduces a lot of meetings. It doesn't add meetings to your organization. It should reduce a lot of the hallway conversation, a lot of the, what I call the duck, duck, goose, who owns what, who's working on what. The leader runs around. The leader sits in one meeting at the beginning of every day, and they should be served up what we produced yesterday. Here's the plan for today, and here's the help we need. And so it actually saves time, doesn't add time when you implement correctly. So how do you do that? Really, daily work team huddles, let's start with those. Think about those as pit stops or timeouts. So these are quick check-ins to identify and communicate issues on the floor. These are in stand-up meetings in front of a visual management floor. They're not not longer than 10 to 15 minutes. I'll share one of those boards, those processes, and then also share how they run. But it is not a problem-solving meeting. It is a meeting in the morning to set the goals for the team and get them to work quickly. Provides an update and a status, and then has a defined agenda. The defined agenda is based off the visual management board. So in this visual management board, you kick off the meeting with recognitions from yesterday. You want to recognize people for going above and beyond their role, helping others out, ensuring that they could achieve their goals. With that agenda, we're also looking at last week's performance against schedule. That's what PAS stands for, performance against schedule. What was the schedule last week? How did we perform? Then you're tracking this week's performance every day against that metrics dashboard and your schedule. Then you've talked about recognitions. Then you go into quality, any near misses or issues, asking the production team, yes, I have a quality issue. The drawing is wrong. I can't machine that part unless I get clarification from the engineer. So you write that down. The supervisor's role is to get that to the engineer and have them come and work with that machinist in this example. Then any safety concerns. Yes, I have a safety concern. The guards on the box cutters are all missing, and that is a safety issue, and we've had lacerations in our past. Great, let's get the right equipment. Let's make sure that we get that now so you can get your job done. And then the supervisor sets the top priorities, and that is the supervisor's role facilitating this top end in this meeting. Then in this center section, everybody's names that works in that work cells on this list already, on this visual management board, their accountabilities, responsibilities, or what they're trained on. If they become trained on a new process, then they add that. Then they take the schedule, you set the assignments of who's going to be aligned to that schedule, and then you ask the person, hey, Donovan, you are assigned to be working on this product today. How many parts can you get machined that you have assigned? They set that goal. And then throughout the day, they're tracking what they're actually hitting hour by hour. And then at the end of shift, I've mentioned you follow up. You said you could get 22 parts. What did you actually hit? I hit 25. Tell me more. How did you do that? The other machinist got 18 on their goal of 25. And you might be able to pair Donovan up with Jim or Sue because he has a different method on how to do it to be more productive. That drives a lot of learning in the organization. Lastly, you ask them for what is your help needed to meet their schedule from any group in the company. And then you have them coordinate their breaks in this section here, coverage needed. If you are not coordinating your breaks, if you are still doing the Fred Flintstone break where everybody goes on break together, highly recommend that you break that up. No pun intended, but you're coordinating your breaks. People are on a different schedule so they know what they're doing. And you can keep the machines running. And then the bottom section is how you solve problems, and that comes later. But let's just stick with huddles in the first phase of doing that. So this is what this does. If you put this visual management board in place, here's the benefit. If you're talking last week's performance against the schedule, now you're quantifying the team's performance against past, and you're using data to do it. This next section on this week's performance against schedule, you're tracking the performance every single shift, every single day. And you will know if you're meeting your schedule or not. You know when to trigger overtime. Too many factories at 5 o'clock on a Friday tell their people they're working on Saturday. You should know that by Wednesday or Thursday based off of how you're tracking your performance against your schedule. Therefore, you can get more proactive. Recognition drives behaviors that you want to see in your team and role model behaviors. And you're recognizing people and sharing knowledge, working with other, and teamwork. When you're talking about quality, the more you talk about quality, the more proactive you'll become and the more improvement oriented you'll be, and you will reduce your excursions or reduce your quality issues just by talking about it. The more you're talking about safety, you're bringing people's awareness to safety, you're preventing that versus having to respond to a safety incident. This priority section, this is how these priorities are set based off your strategy and your strategic goals and objectives broken down into this week's goal. It could sound like this. We have been trying to train people on preventative maintenance. This is the week that we do the training for 2 people in this team. I'm going to need somebody to pick up their roles and responsibilities to do that because it is part of our strategic plan to start doing more preventative maintenance to reduce breakdowns and quality issues. So that's the benefit this section drives. This section is how we educate and learn our capacity. You'll learn that people can produce more than others. You'll learn best known methods. You will learn what this team is capable of doing, and you'll learn all the problems that is preventing it from hitting its schedule by asking people how much they can produce and then following up on that. When you follow up at end of shift, you're setting your accountability system, and you'll be learning those best known methods based off of people's performance. And then by quantifying why they were able to hit it or not, this is where you can hold after action reviews. You can do rapid prototyping. Wow, we were able to hit it this way today. Let's try that again tomorrow and see if we can replicate that. And that's where performance breakthroughs happen. Performance breakthroughs happen by people doing the work, not by continuous improvement leaders or lean resources, showing them a method. It's about people learning how to use those methods and getting their own breakthrough. And then this last section, help needed, it's alignment of the resources and support and getting help from others, alignment with engineering and production, and then schedule management and coordination will keep your tools running and make sure you don't have any communication issues. I thought you were going to do that. Weren't you supposed to cover that break or that absence or that training today? Yes, I was. I just forgot. Great. Let's learn from that. Let's move on, as an example. And then this last section is how you do an after action review. So these are all the benefits of a visual management system and how it is theoretically put together to work. And this is the responsibilities or the standard work of people in your team. So supervisors and managers, they own this top section. They own quantifying last week's performance, this week's performance, and then the team owns the recognitions. Anybody in the team can propose somebody. Anybody in the team, when the supervisor is facilitating and asks, is there any quality issues, the team notes that, puts that on the board. Safety issues the same. The supervisor manager owns setting the priorities for the day based off the schedule. If those change, they own updating that schedule and huddling their team back up for a quick little, timeout like sports teams would do to say, look, we just had a call. They've pushed that out. We've pulled this one in and put it on the board. And then team members own setting their goals, tracking their goals for the day, and then putting the reasons why they hit or missed it. Lastly, the entire team owns putting help needed throughout the day. Supervisor collects those and gets those people coordinated. And then the team owns coordinating their breaks, their absenteeism, their training. Even if they're stepping out for a doctor's appointment, you should write down doctor's appointment 1 to 2, and then somebody should be covering that time when you're out, or the supervisor says, then we're gonna have to idle that process out. So you've seen this already, but here's how it works. You do a visual management huddle at the beginning of shift, 10, 15 minutes. Any help needed that comes out of that board goes into the constraint ops meeting. And then managers are in that meeting representing that huddle, the decisions made on buying tools, pushing out the training, pulling in the schedule, changing the priorities for the day. That gets followed up on by that supervisor manager on those visual management boards. So they write that in. They draw their team's attention to those changes and might walk over to the machinist when the priority is changed to say, look, finish that part up. You need to switch over to this other part. It's on the board, and here's the units we need to produce. That's an example. And then the end of shift huddle is for accountability on how they did against their goals. This is how you drive communication and prioritization against a common goal. Same picture, but this is now let's talk about this constraint ops meeting. We've talked about the huddle, the agenda being the visual management board, going through each one of those sections. But in the daily ops meeting, and yes, I did say daily, not weekly, because you want to time this ops meeting on how fast your communication changes and your performance. And so your attendance is your company leadership team, your CEO, your directors, your managers, and those managers or supervisors are reporting up. The agenda to this meeting is, first, you do the indicator review for each department. So if it's engineering, it's, they own designs by this date. If it's production, work cell, you go through each indicator review on their safety, quality, and delivery. You're determining what are the daily constraints to the schedule. That's why it's called the daily, constraint ops meeting from that perspective. But what are the constraints? This is where you're determining the priorities based off the constraints with the leadership team and allocating the resources. Could be dollars, could be buying parts, could be training people to meet those metrics. So that's the agenda. This takes about 30 minutes to do. Decisions that come out of that go right down into the team huddles onto the visual management board. If one work team is not able to hit its goals and there's a design issue, people from this meeting might say, why don't you, right after this meeting, why don't you go to the floor, meet with that machinist and see what is wrong with that drawing? And so that is going right to the gimbal or the point of activity to do that and being present to do that. This really sets up this leader standard work from the last webinars. So, you have standard work for your leadership and management team, which is being in that constraint ops meeting. The visual controls is that visual dashboard that is used in that visual management meeting. For supervisors, it could be this daily routines of setting up their huddles, their priorities, filling out the huddle board, going to the ops meeting, following up from that ops meeting with the individuals that need to make adjustments to their work, and then being at end of shift and tracking that hour by hour performance to execute that schedule. So, it's being present on those production floors, leading by example, doing that follow-up with people that are doing the actual work, and then quantifying that work and checking the actions. The left of this visual is an hour by hour, by person, who is doing that, and if those visual checks are happening. And then in this third step is this daily accountable process of follow-up and being disciplined about it. And so setting up those routines at leader, manager, supervisor, leads on the floor, from weekly to daily to hourly to multiple times daily, is how you move this visual management breakthrough system forward to get that productivity we're all searching for. The summary, and then we'll open up to questions. Leader standard work connects to this visual management process, this performance breakthrough system on how you optimize your tactical performance. So, aligning your leader standard work to the hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual. This is how you're going to increase your productivity, by being present in those huddles, in those ops meetings, and more importantly, following up on the issues and how do you support them so they can achieve that. So that's, to keep the car on its path, to keep the vehicle on the strategic path to achieve it, you got to have these leader standard work check-ins to be able to do that. The role of leadership is to clarify that leader standard work at each role, establish these standards and routines. These visual management processes will, you'll find out problems daily, multiple times daily. And so your role is to eliminate that waste and remove those barriers and get management and leadership to resource those, partner to solve those problems with your team members, coach and teach them on how to not repeat that same problem every day. That's why having this daily stand-up, you have an opportunity as a coaching platform to teach them, understand how to engage your employees and their ideas. People want their ideas. They want to feel valued and involved. They want to be part of the solution, not seen as the problem, and focus on people and process capability and growing that every day. Communication and collaboration helps everybody reach the top, and leaders should be present to help them get to that summit. And every day is different. The coach in a sports team is not in the locker room. They're on the side of the court. Sometimes they get too involved and they get on the court and they get ejected. And so it's know your role, stay in your role, and execute to it. For that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Donovan, why don't you look at the questions we have from the group, and then we will field those.
Yeah, before we get into the questions, I want to give people time to type a few things down below. Chat box is the lower portion of this in the very center. So they have some questions, comments, we'd love to hear them. We'd love to field them. But Shane, if you would, give me an example or two of implementations that we have done and kind of the output of that. I mean, what if I'm sitting in the owner's chair or the operations leader's chair, and I'm going to be thinking, okay, well, let's fast forward. What is the output of this? You had said at the beginning of this, 20% increase in efficiency.
Yeah, it's a good one. And in the way I would probably frame it is, everybody on the line, if we offered you 20% of productivity increase, would you be interested? And I have no doubt people would say, absolutely. When you say that to leaders, oh, it's a dangerous path. They're like, what do I got to do? What do I got to do? The dangerous path is you got to invest in communication processes and how you collaborate against a common goal. And so if you can get leaders past that first blush of this quick presentation that, I tried to get through really quick, is you're asking us to increase meetings, to put in other forums. And then we're already busy. You're asking us to take time out of our day to huddle up in the morning and huddle up in the evening and set goals and follow up on goals. I'd say, yeah, but in one example, when a leader said that, I said, well, first we're going to take inventory of every meeting you hold. And is it safety, quality, on-time delivery related, or employee related? If it's not, let's look at those, and we might just put those to bed. We might kill those meetings. I've done this process where we save 17 work hours a week in meetings by putting huddles, constraint ops, and a strategy meeting in place. And so that's putting it into the structure. Then once you start asking people, can you perform to this goal? And what would it take to achieve that goal? And you listen, they'll tell you ways that they can achieve it, but they'll have needs and better tools, more accurate drawings. And that's the long fix-it list that goes to that ops meeting that gets prioritized. And so it's about engaging your people on what the issues are to achieving the goal, like Bill Daniels did. And it's worth that investment because people will get engaged if you give them the tools to do their job. They'll actually want to go achieve their goals, like they saw in the 1962 study. I saw it in 1994, and I saw it in every day when I put this in place. We put it in place. I put it in place with a 3-person production facility, and they hit 25% in 3 months. Also put it in place with a large organization where they had 150 people out on a production floor. They doubled their productivity by just putting these principles in place, fixing the standard problems every day that come up versus expecting a different result and doing nothing about it. But you got to invest the time. You got to invest 15 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. You got to get managers all in the room to understand the problems, and you got to get people working towards a common goal. This is not a system that is for production. It's a system for the whole company. So you got to get engineering, design, sales, your operations leaders, and then your finance folks all in a room daily looking at your performance and then reacting to the issues and giving resources to do it. And so, again, we put this in place daily with companies, and the companies that invest in this time get the results. So hopefully that covered some of that, Donovan.
Yeah, I think so. Hey, quick reminder, we're still looking for some questions down below in the chat box, so please don't be bashful. And I would challenge you to try and either stump or come up with a question maybe that we've never covered before. I would say between all of us on here, we've seen just about everything. Another thing, Shane, while people are thinking about their questions or get ready to type something, I'm going to propose another thing out there. What risks are there to doing this? As an organization, risk assessment is always a big thing. So, how can this backfire? If we implement something like this, what am I going to regret?
That's a good one. People run out of this forum and say, man, I've seen that visual. I'm going to start up my own huddles. I'm not discouraging you to do that. And you go verbal and you start asking people, hey, what will it take for you to hit the goals today? First, they're going to see it. Why are we doing this? Back to the Lucille Ball, speed up the belt. Well, we got to produce more. But if you really do it in it's truly in a servant leader manner and say, I'm here to help you understand what it will take for you to be able to hit our schedule, hit our goals daily. And they say, great, you want me to tell you what's preventing us? I'll absolutely tell me. And if they say, these tools aren't calibrated, these designs are wrong, the drawings are never right, and you don't take that help needed and act on it, the worst thing you can do is ask people for feedback, do nothing, and then ask them for feedback again. You got to listen to them and you got to act on it. You got to go grab that design engineer, get them out on the floor and say, hey, can you come out on the floor, meet with John, look at the drawings and help them understand, and they say they're wrong. And my God, they are wrong. These drawings aren't accurate, but they never told me about it. So you got to open up the communication pathways between departments. You got to get people aligned to a common goal. And if you do it all verbal and you don't follow up, people will never show up again. Second, if it's all verbal and it's not written down, how are you going to hold them accountable? And then if you don't assign the work to individuals, I thought you were doing it. No, I thought you were doing it. Good luck on accountability. And so be formal, put it on, write it down on a grease board on the wall. Who's here today? Who's not here today? Who's assigned the work and how much can you get out? That's a start. For us, putting it on a very formal board like this one, this is what gets the results from this perspective. And we can help and partner with you to do that. But this standard methodology wins every time. So be formal, spend the time, communicate, follow up. And when they say they need help, serve them. Be that servant leader to help them. So Donovan, other questions or comments that you have or others are having right now?
Well, I've got two things. One is morale and the other is silver bullet. So talk about morale as far as being one of the outputs as well. At OMA, we have implemented our own version of this as well. We have a couple huddles that we do for what we have in our pipeline and what we are working on as far as delivery projects themselves. So we have a format, we follow something, very similar. And one of the things that I've probably received the most comments about is the recognitions portion of this, because this is a moment where team members get to recognize somebody else for an effort or somebody going out of their way. And the overall output of this is our communication, our collaboration has improved. I think everybody would agree, even to a measurable point. I don't think we've put numbers to it just yet, but certainly the morale and the feedback, that has been proven so far. The other thing is, this efficiency, the 20% gain efficiency being the silver bullet. If there was one recommendation that we could give to just about any organization, would be the implementation of this visual management system right here. Going back to use a simple analogy, I was preparing for a triathlon and I've swam my whole life. Nobody needs to teach me how to swim, but I've never swam for endurance. And 300 meters, 500 meters was kicking my butt. And then that's the first thing that you do before you bike or before you run. And I was wasting a lot of energy. And so I decided to go and see a swim coach. As hard as it was, because I'm a good, strong swimmer, but my time, it wasn't working for me. And by me simply bringing my head up for air, looking ahead, I was creating so much more drag and working so much harder to swim. And he just said, hey, I got one adjustment for you to make. And his silver bullet was keep your head, look down, straight down the water and come side to side for air. And he taught me how to basically coordinate my breathing and to go through the water more efficiently. And I started knocking, 5 minutes off my 500 meter time right away. So that was my silver bullet to doing the triathlon.
And Donovan, this is a good analogy because the supervisor is the coach or the lead's the coach. The team member head down at the tool, at the design, making sure there's no quality issues. And so if they have to lift their head to look up for an engineer, look up for an accurate drawing, look up for a tool that they need to use that it isn't in their immediate surrounding, they've just come off course. They've just cost time and drag. And so the silver bullet here, out of all the things, if a leader said, Shane, I got to improve my productivity because my bottom and top line, so on and so forth, what's the one thing I would do? I would invest time in a visual management system because it touches all of these things in red. And these are all, ask yourself, take inventory if you're on the line today. Are you tracking your performance? Do you know how you performed last week at each team? Safety, quality, cost, output, and morale. Are you tracking performance right now? It is Thursday. Are you ahead or behind the schedule based on where you should be at Thursday at 11 o'clock? If you're not, then you don't have a dashboard. You don't even know where the vehicle is. Are you using positive reinforcement to engage your people against a common goal? That's what recognitions does. Are you talking quality? Are you putting more in the scrap bin? The way to measure the variance on a production floor, I go, hey, where's the scrap bin? And do you have a scale? Why do you want a scale? I want to measure the pounds of aluminum, mild steel, titanium, whatever you're doing. And that is the cost of poor quality. Are you doing safety? Are you synchronizing your strategic growth plans to the tactical execution? So look at these red areas. Are you engaging people? Are you holding them accountable? Are you engaging them on setting their own goals and then holding them accountable to it? I guarantee when you ask people what their goal is, most people will commit to a higher goal than what the schedule demands. And they'll say, but I can do that if you give me the following. So take inventory against these things in red. And this is the silver bullet. A lot of folks that go in pure with the lean focus will say, well, we got to do a value stream map. We got to look at the waste in the factory. We got to go look at workflow. All those things are important, but I can guarantee you, if you meet with your team and ask them where to put those lean efforts, they will immediately tell you every day where the pain points are. They know, they're doing the work. No consultant, no supervisor is going to know exactly where the pain is more than a machinist that has a bad drawing. And that's where it breaks down. So this is a lot in a webinar. I understand it. If you want resources to take you deeper down this process, OMA has them. I'm available. Donovan's available. Our entire delivery team is available. Ben's on the line I saw this morning. He's taken people through this process, but we have 4 or 5 other folks that can take you as well. But this is the silver bullet to not only drive performance, but drive morale and everything else. I'm seeing we got a question in the chat here.
I was putting our website in the chat so that people can go not only contact us through the website, but also view our previous webinars and events, as well as register for future ones. So I wanted to make sure we got that information out to folks today.
That's good. It's good.
And
There's no other further questions. The last webinar in this series that we've done, 8 series webinar on how to optimize an organization. The next one will be transformational performance measures. We've talked about a metrics dashboard. All of these webinars link to scaling an organization's performance or optimizing it. So today we've talked about visual management, but you got to have metrics at all levels. Metrics at company, metrics at division, metrics at work team, work cell, and individual. So this next webinar will be giving you an understanding of how you set it from company all the way down to individual. So therefore, when you turn on a visual management process, you have a visual dashboard for each level. So we'll be taking you through these concepts and connecting the dots to this process we shared today and to the company as well. So I'd say if there's no other questions, this is a big, heavy topic that we've covered today. It comes with big, massive benefits. You know, I've done more stories than not. I had a company that couldn't produce over $520,000 of goods in the aerospace industry. And within 3 months, they were producing $1.2 million just by doing this visual management, you know, coordination and collaboration and setting goals and accountability. I've had it at smaller levels at smaller companies, and anybody that's implemented would say, this is the silver bullet. So thanks for your time. Appreciate you tuning in. Feel free, this will be recorded up on the website. Grab your leader by the nose and say, you need to watch this. If you want us to come in, we will spend time with you on not only how to diagnose the issues in your company, but also to go deeper on this visual management process. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you.